Hey third graders, welcome to Module 5, Lesson 25. We are so close to the end, you guys. Today we are going to express whole number fractions on the number line when the unit distance is 1 or unit interval is 1. So we're actually going to be practicing writing whole numbers as fractions today. So turning like that 1, 2, 3 into a certain way that we can write it as a fraction. So that's what you're going to learn today. All right, let's get started. To begin today's lesson, I'd like you guys to draw 3 similar rectangles on your paper and 3 similar number lines on your paper. Go ahead and do that, press pause, and press play when you're done. On the first rectangle, I'd like you guys to partition this first rectangle into 3 equal parts. So go ahead and do that, press pause, and press play when you're done. All right, I'm gonna divide mine into thirds. I know that a third is a little bit less than a half when I draw it and a little bit more than a half when I draw it. So here's my halfway point. So I know a third is a little bit above and a little bit below 1/2. You could have also partitioned it this way with vertical lines. Either way is fine. So right here we have 3 thirds. And 3 thirds equals 1. Now partition the second rectangle into halves. Go ahead and do that, press pause and press play when you're done. All right, so halves would be right in the middle, and I'm going in the same direction. And then, oh, I hope you guys could see that. And then we're gonna label it 2 halves equals 1 whole. Now let's look at our third rectangle. I want you guys to partition this into 1 whole. 1 whole. Go ahead and try that and press pause and press play when you're done. Was that kind of confusing to partition it into 1 whole? Because isn't it 1 whole already? So you didn't have to do anything. But how would you write 1 whole as a fraction? So we know that we would write 1 whole as just the number 1. But how would we write the number 1 as a fraction? Let's think about this. So would we write it like 0 over 1 because, you know, it's in one piece, but there are no parts? Well, that wouldn't make sense because we know that if 0 is on the numerator, then like we've got nothing, but we have all of this here. So like if I was to shade in how much I have, I would have to shade in the whole entire rectangle. So we definitely have something. We don't have nothing, so no, this wouldn't work. Would we write it as 1 over 0 because we have one part, but it is divided into no pieces? Well, that wouldn't really make sense because I have one whole piece right here. So again, this shows that we have nothing, but we do. We have something right here. So, all right, that's not going to work either. So what if we took our 2 ideas and we put them together? So I know, remember, our denominator shows how many equal parts our item is divided into. So we have 1 equal part. So let's go back to our notes. So we have 1 equal part that it's divided into. And how many parts do we have? We've got 1 part. So 1 whole is written as 1 over 1 as a fraction. Let's go ahead and show that also on our number line. So draw your thirds, your halves, and your wholes starting from 0 to 1 on each number line. Each number line should be the same distance or the same length because we're going to compare our same 3 rectangles, and they all go from 0 to 1. All right, go ahead and put your thirds, your halves, and your wholes, and press pause and press play when you're done. All right, looking at my thirds, so a half is about there, so I know that a third is a little less, and then 2 thirds is a little more than a half. And so then I can label it 0 thirds, 1 third, 2 thirds, 3 thirds, or 1 whole. Okay, that makes sense. We've already been doing that. And then here, oh, I forgot to put my 0 thirds. And then here, we have our halves. So we would have our half right here. So we'd have 0 halves, 1 halves, 2 halves, which we also know makes 1 whole. And then here for our 1 whole, we don't have to label anything. So we have, here we have, or we don't have to label much. We have 0 wholes, so 0 over 1. And here we have, when we get to the end of this distance, we have 1 whole, or 1 over 1. This time on your notes, I'd like you guys to draw 3 groups of 2 wholes. So this is going to be 1 whole, and this will be a whole. This will be a whole, a whole, a whole, and a whole. So your number lines are going to go from 0 to 2. Go ahead and draw this, press pause and press play when you're done. All right, so just like in the first rectangle that we did before that we divided into thirds when it was 1 whole, we're going to do that again, but we're going to do that for each of the wholes. So we're going to partition this into thirds, so go ahead and do it along with me. All right, so we know that when we had 1 whole, we had 3 thirds. So let's go 4 thirds, 5 thirds, 6 thirds. So we have 6 copies of 1 third if we make 2 wholes. All right, let's see our next one. This time we're going to do our halves. So we're going to divide each of our wholes into half. So if each of these is 1 half, we have 1 half, 2 halves, 3 halves, 4 halves, or 2 wholes. And then finally on our last one, we're going to keep it just as 1 whole and 1 whole. So here we've got 2 wholes, but how would we write that as a fraction? So remember on our last one, a whole was we had 1 part of 1 equal piece, but this time how many parts do we have of 1 equal piece? We have 1 part or 1 whole and 2 wholes. So we have 2 wholes each in 1 part or 1 piece. So we have 2 over 1. All right, I hope that you're starting to see the pattern when we get to 1, or when we are only writing fractions for whole numbers. Let's go ahead and represent this on our number line. On our number line, we went from 0 to 2, so let's go ahead and add our middle whole number that's missing, which would be 1. And now we're going to partition them just like we did the last one. So from 0 to 1 whole, if we partition this into halves. So my first 1 whole, let's go ahead and do thirds first. Our first number line is going to be partitioned into thirds. So this whole right here from 0 to 1 whole, our first whole, it should be cut into thirds. So go ahead and do that right now. And our second whole is also cut up into thirds. So we'll do that now. But now we need to label our fractions. Go ahead and try labeling the fractions. Press pause and press play when you're done. All right, you should have done 0 thirds, 1 third, 2 thirds, 3 thirds, or 1 whole, so we'll box that in, 4 thirds, 5 thirds, 6 thirds, or 2 wholes. How did you guys do? All right, let's do our halves on this number line. Go ahead and try that. Press pause and press play when you're done. All right, so our first whole is cut in half. Our second whole is cut in half. And so to label that, we have 0 halves, 1 half, 2 halves, or 1 whole, 3 halves, and 4 halves, or 2 wholes. All right, let's look at our third number line. So this time our wholes are staying where they're at. So we don't need to cut them into anything, but we're still going to write them as our fraction. So we know that if it's a whole number, 1 goes on the bottom because we haven't cut it into any pieces. So we just have that one part, that one piece. So here, go ahead and try to label it with your fractions. I'll get you started at 0 wholes and see if you can label this one and this one. Press pause and press play when you're done. All right, so you should have done 0 wholes, 1 whole, 2 wholes. How did you guys do? For your final problem, pretty short, I just want you guys to label a number line going from 0 wholes to 3 wholes, and then you're just gonna label the wholes as a fraction. So I want you guys to write a fraction here, here, and here. All right, so I got you guys started with 0 wholes. So how would you write 1 whole as a fraction, 2 wholes, and 3 wholes as a fraction if you're just counting by 1 wholes? Go ahead and try that, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye.